Fighting gurus back in the lab with the pen and the pad, making everyone mad, asking themselves how come they can't predict like the king, who can't seem to stop winning for him and his team. So it seems all that's left is in the end, his enemies have to turn into friends. Like the old saying goes, don't step on his toes, he's known to eliminate his foes, even the ones pretending to be his bros. So instead I think they rather sit back and let him help make their money grow. And all that starts by you enjoying and taking notes on these shows.
MMA community, YouTubers, big ballers, all the money making team, the guys who better be coming back here on my YouTube channel to thank me for all the money that they're about to make this weekend. All right, UFC's got a pretty interesting, fun card. I like it. I don't think many other people are fans of it. One of my Patreon members made a comment about other channels that are coming back off of unsuccessful weeks and months. And they're saying that this is a card that everybody should fade and nobody should bet it. And I'm getting a lot of patrons nervous because of all the rumors about it being a difficult card. I give you my word, none of these picks will be wrong. In the Patreon, we're going to get them all right. Unless some freak accidents. Obviously, nobody can control the weird things like robberies or, dead foot or shattering your leg bone and stuff like that. You can't control. But if everything's according to plan, the majority of the time, 8, 9, 10, some of them, I'll tell you what the statistics and the percentages are, how safe they are. I break it down into tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. So you'll know the adversity. Like last week, if you look at my color-coded picks, they have timestamps on them. They're still in the Patreon. And I also took a screenshot and I posted it on my social media. You'll see that not only did I get 100% correct on my picks last week for the jury card in the main event, and I got my prop bets 100% and my single bets 100%. The color-coded picks were perfect. Every color, if it was a black circle, that means no adversity mismatch. Those were like the fights that came to an end, like in the first round, quick knockouts or unanimous decisions, like the Stricklands. The ones that were circled no adversity, they fought like it was a mismatch. The ones that I circled in blue were adversity, they fought like there was adversity. They went to like split decisions, or like it literally couldn't have been more perfect. It was almost as if I watched the fights before I made the circles. Literally not one circle color was wrong. So not just the right picks, but the right level of adversity I predicted as well. All right, so and we cashed in on some pretty nice prop bets, like the plus 300 Strickland decision, which was in a lot of parlays. And anyway, but yeah, I got to do some commentary for this PFL event today. I'm helping out a friend on his channel. I used to do this for kind of like an extra income side job. I don't do it anymore, but he's asking for favors. I break down the fights on his channel sometimes, so I'll be unavailable today watching the PFL fights soon. So I got to hurry up and get off this video ASAP. So time is ticking. I'm going to get straight to the picks. We got some underdogs, good, juicy, paying, big, fat juice. And now I get why people are having trouble. I'm seeing a lot of underdogs here, and people are very afraid. When you're not as confident, like for me, when you put a guy like minus plus 600, plus 500 underdogs, to me, they're favorites. If I think that they're going to win, it makes no difference to me what the line says. You could put it as a plus 15,000 and I'll still tell you you're wrong. Like the Louis Koski versus Sasha, the Chandler versus the Hookers, the Magny versus Chiesa, the Nam versus Schnell. I told you they had it wrong. Buckley versus Alessio Di Chirico. I told you why. I didn't just tell you why they were wrong. I explained to you the reasons. The style nightmare matchups. This guy does this guy does that. That's going to come together like this. If they did this, if that guy does that, this guy does it. He responds this way. I broke it down to a science. Same way I told you Jiri. If Dominic Reyes, go back to my last video for Dominic Reyes. Not only did I predict the knockout, not only did we cash it out on parlays, several parlays, I told you these exact words. I'm going to quote myself. Dominic Reyes, if he fights the way he's used to fighting and in all of his fights, if he doesn't change anything in his style, he comes into the fight with the same style we see him come into all of his other fights, he's going to get hurt very bad. Same thing I said about Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier. I said in the second round, if Dustin, by the time, because he goes through a feeling process that takes about a round and a half. I said if Dustin does not get knocked out in the first round, he's a great live bet. If you look at my Dustin versus Conor video, it was like 32 minutes into the video. I said 32 minutes into the Dustin Conor breakdown. Mind you, Conor was a huge favorite. I said in the first round, he's going to win. So he'll be even a bigger favorite and Dustin will be a bigger underdog, which is true. If you look at the scorecards, Conor won the first round decisively. All three judges gave it to Conor. So it became a huge underdog, like minus 1,100 if I'm not mistaken, plus 1,100. So I said if he survives the first round, your best bet is to live bet Dustin Poirier. What happened? I said Conor was going to be in some danger. It was going to be dangerous for him. Exact words. Go look at everything's in timestamps. You're going to see all of it in. I predict these things, not just who's going to win and how they're going to win. All right, let's get the next things going. I'm going to give you a special segment today. Three picks. Two of them are underdogs, and I'll just give you. I don't have time. I'll still give you a brief explanation on why these underdogs are going to win. And then I'll give you my lock of the week, I guess you can call them. Not really a lock of the week. You know what I'm doing now, just so you guys know? These are not random. The new perk of my Patreon. Anybody who joins even the $10 tier, they're going to have a say-so in which 3 fights. Remember, I only select every week. If you're a follower of my channel, you're going to be gifted and given for free 3 fights, predictions, and breakdowns, which comes with like prop bets basically, because I tell you how the fights are going to play out exactly. And that's why we cashed in Alessio even Joaquin. I'm sorry. That thing I even posted it on Twitter. Rodolfo Vieira, I said the way he shoots for takedowns when he gets desperate, and Fluffy is a machine at snatching up necks off of the sloppy takedowns. He's put people to sleep. As I had many people show me plus 2,000 prop bets cashed in, plus 2,000. So what is that? If you bet $100, you won $2,000. If you listened to my show or read my tweets from my social media, I said he was going to get put to sleep. I even had another handicapper question me because we're friends. He's a follower of mine. He asked me, "Are you sure, man, Anthony could do that?" I was like, "I'm not just sure. I'm positive. I can tell you he's going to snatch up his necks because I've seen him do it to other people before. And I've seen him do it to other people and fail and keep trying again and again." So I knew he was at least going to try. And if anybody's going to try to do something that's plus 2,000, I'm going to take a shot on it and hope that they succeed in doing it if they're going to try. And that's what I was sure of. If nothing else, I wasn't 100% sure that he was going to do it, succeed at it, but I knew 100% sure it was going to have to happen maybe 2 or 3 times before he finally succeeded. But I was very confident in him succeeding on it. Anyways, back on track. So my underdog pick of the day, I have 2 of them, sorry. One of them, and let me explain to you why. Neal Magny versus Jeffrey Neal. The Neal versus the Neals, but they're spelled different. Don't be a casual and spell it the same because they're different. These are 2 different spellings of Neals, and if you don't spell them differently, then you're a casual, and we found you. All right, sorry about that. I don't like casuals, so I go on a rant. I even hired a name girl so that they don't think I'm a casual. All right, back on track. Jeffrey Neal versus Neal Magny. I don't know why he's a minus 190 coming off of his performance. Was a performance that it wasn't like Stephen Thompson had a resurgence and looked the best we've ever seen him. He got touched pretty bad. He got touched up. He looked really bad. He had to go through surgeries and stuff after that fight. So it was actually one of the worst versions of Stephen Thompson as we ever seen. And let me take you back to a fight. Okay, if you looked at, this guy has this is what the odd makers are looking at. let me tell you why he's a minus 200 for those who are wondering. Oh, and even my own patrons think that this is a solid parlay piece. That's how it shows that lines they influence people. If you look at Geoff Neal's entire history of everybody he's ever fought, he's never fought a wrestler. The only time he's ever fought a wrestler, like a strong wrestler who goes for takedowns from start to finish, is his first fight ever on Dana White Contender Series. Mind you, this is a performance where he's got to try his absolute best, not just to win, but to get a finish. So this is going to be 110% Geoff Neal, his best performance of his life. And let me tell you something about that performance. Very lackluster. Luckily for him, he was fighting a guy who's the lowest. Again, Dana White Contender Series. This is not the UFC. This is not the Olympics. This is the lowest of the lowest people trying to get on the UFC platform any way possible. So they couldn't get on any other way. They resorted to going onto a TV show to try to make it that way. So they're usually full of low-level fighters. The Josh Pierce, the Parisians, the Joshua Parisians, the Parker Porter type of low-level quality fighters. Well, he was fighting against the guy who's never fought in the UFC before, very low-level, 500 record type of a fighter, loses a lot, very, very bad fighter, okay? Let me tell you what that guy did, because he's a primarily wrestler. He's the closest you'll ever see on Geoff Neal's record in history of his entire full breakdown of all of his fights in the UFC. He's the closest to the style of Neal Magny's. He does exactly the same thing Neal Magny does pretty much in all of his fights, just not as good. He control up until the knockout, because they call him hands of steel. He's got power. If nothing else, he doesn't have sense of urgency. This is a guy, after he loses his fights, he'll go the next day and have a party and forget all about it. That same day, not even the next day, Geoff Neal doesn't care about his losses so much. He's not that type of a competitor. He's not a guy who dwells on his losses and works on getting better until he solves his problem. He's not that type of person. That's why you got to get to know people before you bet on them. And he showed that he didn't care so much, because even while he was losing rounds and it gotten to the point, like when we seen Sergio Pettis versus Stephen Thompson, when he realizes at the point of no return, like you have to either knock Stephen Thompson out or you're going to lose by decision. This guy's a point machine. You can't outpoint him. So what did he do? He resorted into knocking Stephen Thompson out. Neal had to do something different. He had to go in his entire full 5 rounds. He stuck to the same game plan, repeated it every second of every round, didn't do anything different, and he was not getting any success doing it. That just shows he doesn't have that thing inside of him that says, man, I got to try something new. I got to go outside the game plan. I got to dare to be great. I got to do something that's going to, get some different results. He doesn't care, man. He got his paycheck. He knows people know that Thompson's not a scrub. He didn't lose to a scrub. He's already coming off some wins. Nobody's going to kick him out of the UFC. His job was secure. His paycheck was secure. The opponent was not low level, so he was okay with it. You could see it. He was okay with losing. He wasn't even upset at the end. He gave him a hug. He was happy. He was high-fiving people. You could tell. But his opponent is this is a guy who, if you don't pay him money, if he was the guy who was raising his hand to fight Khamzat when nobody else was, because he doesn't care about losses as much as just competing. This is a guy who would fight just for the sake of fighting, just for the competition purposes. His legacy, his reputation, he wants to be known as a great fighter. His legacy, it's quite the opposite of the mentality that his opponent has. That's a huge thing right there. That's a big advantage. Secondly, his size and reach. What he's going to try to do is he's going to have to get inside the distance and close the distance before he can get himself in any danger. And with that light length, that advantage in the size of the physicality alone for his style, if it wasn't for Chiesa having such a stronger physique and more of a bit of a grappling advantage, and more importantly a strength advantage, he would have done very, very well against Chiesa. But I predicted Chiesa to win, and we bet him in parlays. I even cashed a 6-leg parlay with Chiesa. I had him in a lot of parlays because I knew he was, For every time, I tell you guys this a million times, when we have two wrestlers going against each other, the Gravely versus the Greatest, I told you guys that anytime you have a guy who's stronger and they're both going to try to wrestle each other, the stronger guy is always usually going to be the one that wins the positioning. I knew Chiesa was a stronger guy, so I picked Chiesa for more than one reason, but I also knew he's a little bit more high level as well. But Hands of Steel only has 90% takedown defense is because he's only fought against one guy. And the reason it's not 100% takedown defense like an Usman, who's even fought against more wrestlers, had more fights, but he still has 100% defense for takedowns because he's a real wrestler. But this guy isn't. Hands of Steel is not a wrestler. And the only guy who ever tried to take him down was very successful and dominated him. And he was a low-level guy. Guys never fought in the UFC, who lost in the tournament very quickly and got knocked out. If it wasn't for the knockout, Hands of Steel was on his way to lose a decision to one of the most low-level guys on the show and I've ever seen, period. So now imagine a guy of this caliber. This guy's still young in his prime. He's still getting better. And he's a 10 times better version of that guy who he was having a lot of trouble against. So it's a style matchup nightmare for Geoff Neal, who, again, Chase Walden was giving him problems. He successfully scored a takedown in less than 1 minute of the first round while Geoff Neal was still fresh. And let me tell you, his opponent, Neal Magny, is going to ride him so hard. This freaking fight is going to be the most taxing. He's not going to let off of the pressure. Pressure. He's going to make you feel like you're in a triathlete marathon. He's going to take every ounce of cardio off of your back. From the first round, you're going to feel like you were already in a 10-round fight. He doesn't stop the fight for a second. You don't take a chance to breathe with him because he's a gym rat. He's a guy who doesn't leave the gym. He's the first guy in, the last guy out. He's got cardio for days. He's used to doing round after round after round on the mat. So that's his normal pace. He works from. That's one of his best qualities. He can wear somebody out. So even if he's losing a fight, don't be surprised if after the first round you see it turning around. He's the kind of a guy who can beat a person who's more skilled if that person doesn't have the cardio to hang with him. Unluckily for him and luckily for Chiesa Magny, he's also a cardio machine. He's a very good athlete. He's got good physique as well. And he was able to continue. But again, he was dominating. So he was the one taking the cardio out of his opponent, not the other way around. So that's a bit different. But when it's a back and forth fight, people are struggling for position and trying to dominate over the other person. That's a different type of a fight. That's going to be a fight where you don't have 2 rounds, 3 rounds of being able to do that without taking breaks. And that's the thing he's not going to give you. He's not going to give you a break. When you're gassing, when you're sucking for air, he's going to be going for single leg level changes, double leg sweeps, trips. He's going to be doing everything he needs to do to get you onto the ground. And he does have good timing. He's a very high level guy. He's a good fighter. He's a good striker. He's got good timing, good precision. He's just really good everywhere. He's not the greatest at anything, but he's good at everything else. I mean, he's just good at everything. And that's usually more dangerous. I rather fight a guy who's only good at one thing, even if he's the greatest at it, than a guy who's not the greatest at anything, but he's good at everything. Because now I can't find any holes in his game. I can't expose any weaknesses. He's going to be able to protect himself and have an answer for everything I do. Whereas opposed to a guy who's just the greatest at one thing, I'll know where to go where he's not going to be the greatest because he's only great at that thing. I'll go do something that's different that doesn't allow me to have to be in threat or in danger of that one thing. It's easy to avoid just one thing than to have to avoid a little bit of everything. So trust me when I tell you this is a bad matchup. It's a guy who's coming off a loss, which means he's the most dangerous he's ever going to be. He's not going to accept his loss very lightly as opposed to his opponent who's already forgotten about it during the fight. He already gave up before the fight was even over. So nonetheless, a Magny who you saw, he was trying his hardest from first, second to the third, fourth, fifth. He was not giving up. He did everything he could to try to beat that his opponent, who he opened up as a favorite against, by the way. And they don't give that guy love, man. And if there's anybody that's more underrated than Neal, it would probably be, I guess, Chiesa. Chiesa is another guy who's very underrated. So he opened up as a very big favorite. So I made a lot of money on those parlays that day. I didn't understand. This is another situation where he should not be this big of a underdog. I promise he should even be the slight favorite. And remember, just look at the Chase Walden fight. If you don't believe me, look at the success he was having against Geoff Neal. And then ask yourself if he could do that. If Chase Walden in the Dana White Contender Series can do that to him before he got knocked out, what do you think Magny is going to do if he doesn't get knocked out, especially? Remember, once you take somebody's cardio out, the second, third, fourth, fifth rounds, their punches don't have the same effect. You can eat their punches a lot easier. His hands of steel will become hands of pillow fists. They won't be as strong. They won't be as effective and dangerous because he won't have enough cardio and he won't be as much. There won't be enough power behind him because he won't be as fresh. And that eliminates the threat. So the style is, again, match made in it's a nightmare matchup for him. Also, you got to remember, this guy's got an 80-inch reach. The Haitian Sensation has much better output to inputs. He absorbs only 2 strikes per minute, and he gives out 4. And his opponent, Geoff Neal, gives out the same amount. His striking differential rate is even. He takes the exact same amount of punches that he gives. So they're at a missed advantage there. His takedown average is awesome. It's about 3 takedowns per 15 minutes, which is excellent. So, he's also going to be a little bit younger than him. So he's got the youth advantage, the reach advantage, the size advantage, the striking differential advantage, takedown average advantage. There's too many advantages for him to be an underdog. He's got the more paths to victory. Geoff Neal doesn't fight at a fast pace. He doesn't have a high volume. Like if we look at one of their Hector Lombard fight, Neal Magny, having success not just with takedowns and getting, mind you, he didn't even finish the third round. This was in a matter of only 2 rounds, 2 full rounds. He didn't even start. He barely started a few seconds into the third round. He won by knockout, so he didn't get to finish not even the full minute of the third round. And just in 2 rounds, he landed with a takedown, mind you. So there was some time not on the feet. 2 rounds, not even fully on the feet. He landed 150 strikes. You can give 10 rounds to Geoff Neal. He will not land 150 strikes. He won't even come close. He actually got 171 strikes landed against him on his Stephen Thompson fight. And even in a 5-round fight, a full 5 rounds, didn't come to a stop. Not one person got a takedown. In 5 rounds, neither him or Thompson scored a takedown. There was even a moment where Thompson fell into the ground, and he let him back up. He let him take his time to get back up when he could have gone down there and done some ground and pound. We know where his weakness is. Stephen Thompson's not a grappler. He had an opportunity to limit his movement, stop his karate stances where he was comfortable. He had an opportunity to take him out of his world, out of his realm where he's comfortable, where he's the most effective. He fell on the ground. He slipped. And he waited for him to get back up instead of trying to pounce on that. That told me everything I needed. From that day on, I said, I'm either going to fade this guy or I'm going to pass on the fights. Because he's a guy who can ruin your night with the one punch, but against the right opponent who's got advantages, who's going to be willing to, especially after a loss, which remember that. Anybody coming off of a loss who's a good wrestler with this takedown average accuracy is going to use and rely on his wrestling. Even Gregor Gillespie was on this card in his interviews before the fight got scrapped the first time against his other opponent. He said, look, man, I hate these trolls. Everybody was, my first and only loss I came from. And you should see how many people are in my inbox trolling me and talking crap. But I got to admit that there's some of them that keep telling me the same thing. And I got to agree with them that they're right about. If there's nothing else they're right about something. This is Gregor Gillespie's own words. This is why I'm comfortable in taking him as a good lock, and I'm comfortable with locking him in as a bet, because he's understanding of the fact that he fell in love with his hands. He was having too much success, too much confidence. That's why sometimes I tell you, you're better off taking a guy coming off of a loss than a guy with 3-4 fight win streak or undefeated, because they get too confident. They get too cocky. They start to get too comfortable and full of themselves, buy into their own hype, and drink their own juice and Kool-Aid, and that can turn into a disaster, while the other guy is more hungrier and more self-aware and alert. You're still in your la la land thinking that Superman is real. So this case, he said the trolls were right, that I should have been relying on my wrestling more, and I didn't go to my wrestling fast enough. I was supposed to be using my wrestling. That's my main bread and butter. That's my go-to. That's where I'm the best in the world in. In the wrestling realm, nobody can compare to Gillespie. He's better than like a Merab even. We've seen how effective Merab was against a strong wrestler like Cody Stamen. Well, Merab is still not even as good of a wrestler as Gregor Gillespie. And Merab is one of the best wrestling because he has a different style. It's not that normal. He's got that like Greco-Roman, that like European, that like Dagestani type of wrestling. That's that stronger. That's like Sambo similar. That wrestling is always going to be better in MMA than regular, just like collegiate or Division II type of like Usman type of wrestling, because it's not as effective, and for many reasons I don't have the time to get into it. Gregor Gillespie is just a guy who's on a different level. When it comes to wrestling, it's night and day. He's got too many advantages. And do you remember how Neal had the most success? Neal said that the game plan just kind of went out the window in the earlier rounds when it was more back and forth. It looked like he got into some trouble. And then once you saw him start to dominate against Diego Ferreira, it was because he started using his wrestling. And if he can, a guy like Neal had success in wrestling in the wrestling department against Diego. What do you think a guy like this is? This is a division. Can you pull up the accolades for Gregor Gillespie? I think, did we do that? Do you have that in front of you? I know it takes you a long time to pull it up, but if you can pull it up, I'd appreciate that. Do you have it in front of you? Or can you grab it?
No.
It's not there? The Gregor Gillespie's accolades on his Wikipedia. I know he was a Division 1. I think he was a Division 1 wrestler, right? Does it say Division 1 or 2?
1 second.
Anyway, while she's looking into that. Gregor Gillespie is super. If it wasn't for this moment, like if he wasn't coming off his first and only loss, if he wasn't self-aware, and it's like that thing, it's like anybody who's battling through addiction or has a problem, then if they don't acknowledge it, it's a lost cause, and you can't really depend on them to fix their issues or recover, right? But the first step to recovery is admitting and acknowledging that what your problem is. Well, he acknowledged it. He admitted to it. He said their trolls are right. That was all I needed to hear. A guy who was undefeated for a long time because he was using such great wrestling during his fights is going to go back to what got him to the show. He knows what he needs to do. He knows how important it is not to lose 2 in a row. And a guy who is a very high level. Wrestlers are very competitive people. Anytime, that's what I'm saying. Magny is a wrestler. He's primarily a wrestler. Wrestlers are very competitive. They don't accept losing. They hate losing. What were you saying?
Yeah.
What is it? Division 1.
Yeah.
What year was it? Because that was the year. Go ahead.
I was 2009 and 2008.
2008. Look at those.
2006.
Look those years up. I think it was 08 or 09. That was the year where the Michael Jordan of wrestling. There was a guy, I forget his name, man. You know, might mean with names. There's a guy who's like, he'll always be known as the greatest wrestler of our generation for the entire planet. He was on that year. He was competing in the tournament on that year. He did not get as far and win as high of a level as Gillespie did. Gillespie advanced further than he did in that division, and he won the highest rankings as opposed to that guy. That guy fell underneath him somewhere. He didn't win. He didn't advance as far. That just shows what type of a wrestler this guy is. I know you have good wrestlers and great wrestlers, but this is I can't stress enough the difference of of how much more of a better wrestler he is than your normal average person. So, when you have, and I've always said wrestling and boxing are two of the most important things that you need to have in MMA. But when you have such good, when one of those things is so great, look how I told you Strickland had probably one of the best boxing look how important that was. His angles, his footwork, his jab, his cardio in addition with it. It was so beautiful. It was a mismatch. That's why I circled it in black. For no adversity. I knew his opponent was strong. I even put that he was going to win by decision. So if I said by decision, because I made that as a prop bet inside several parlays, and I also said no adversity, meaning a mismatch. What does that tell you? That I expected him from the beginning to the end to pick him apart and just be able to look great the entire time, but without adversity. So I didn't expect him to put him away, because the guy's strong, he's durable, he's a good fighter himself, but that's just the level of where Strickland is. Even against those guys, he won't have any moments of adversity. He'll just outshine somebody like that from start to end. That's why I circled it in my highest level of comfort, my highest tier 1 level of safe picks. Black circle. That's what you can look at and see that I circled him as. Okay, so you got another underdog. I told you my underdog was Geoff. There's too many reasons. If you're in the Patreon, you'll get the full breakdown. I'll give you. I have 20 more reasons why Haitian Sensation should be the rightful favorite and has advantages in a lot of different places, and he should get the win. It'll be a good fight. It's not going to be a big mismatch because the other guy's got always the equalizer. He's got that punch, and Magny is not the reason. Another reason why he goes for wrestling so much and he doesn't try to play around is he knows he doesn't have the greatest chin. So he's not going to, but again, his opponent doesn't have the best timing. He's not super high volume. He's not fast. He's not like some explosive jury type of a fighter. He's a guy who will only knock you out is if you're willing to stand up and trade with him. If you stay all 5 rounds and you don't have Stephen Thompson, Israel Adesanya cat-like reflexes, and you want to stay in front of him for 5 rounds and box it out, then he'll win. But if you're not going to do that, then you're likely going to beat him. You can beat him. Very good chance of it. If you're at the level of where Neal Magny is. Neal Magny has some great training partners too, guys. There's a lot of people he spars and trains with that can emulate and are even higher level. He trains with higher level guys than Geoff Neal. So when he gets in the fight with Geoff Neal, it's not going to feel like he's out of place or in an uncomfortable territory or uncharted lands. He's going to feel like this is another day at the gym with other high-level guys who I've fought against and sparred against on a daily basis since the last 12 years. So this is nothing special, nothing scary. There's nothing like, I told you Dominic Reyes was going to have a hard time because nobody can emulate. If I told you guys my exact words, again, I'll quote myself. If you go to a gym, 99% of the people can emulate Dominic Reyes. Not one person in this world will be able to emulate Jury. Okay, sorry, allergies. All right, so I gave you 2 picks. My other third pick, we're not going to be able to focus on much, but it's okay. Long story short, Marina Rodriguez. I like her boxing. I think she's got good potential to be a good fighter, and she'll have success in the UFC and put on some good fights. This is just a little bit too quick. Amanda Ribas. A victory over her because she had a lot of hype coming in, but just as a girl who's gotten knocked out in the regional scene, she's very chinny. She has 0 stand-up striking skills, and she looked like a world beater because she finished Paige Van Zandt inside the first round as soon as it went to the ground. So, but if she can't get a fight to the ground, she's very sloppy. She trips over herself. She doesn't have confidence. She's very scared of getting hit, but she's too proud. Her Brazilian resilient attitude of not wanting to admit to not being able to stand up with the best of them is what's gotten her in trouble in the past, and it's what got her in trouble against Marina. After having a 10-8 round, let me remind you, Marina, before winning her last fight, in the first round, from the beginning to the end, was dominated by a small girl like Amanda Ribas. She was 10-8 rounded. Amanda Ribas won the first round by 10-8. It was a 10-8 round. So I'm not comfortable betting on somebody who loses a 10-8 round against somebody like Ribas. Ribas was showing potential to have greatness, but then if this is mixed martial arts, MMA, and you're having a hole in your game the size of the freaking the craters on the moon, that's the type of holes that she has in her game, that they're that big that you can fit a freaking, I don't know, a tree branch, and a stump. It's huge. Her holes are very big, and you can't get away with a hole like that inside MMA's highest levels. Like, you can get away with it in the top 20. Once you get to the top 15, top 10, top 5, you're going to be getting put away inside the distance in every one of your fights. First round. You're not going to be able to make it into the higher rankings. So, but Marina is the same thing like her, in a different world. Her takedown defense, this is a girl who's not that, she doesn't have like 10 years, she's not a 10-year girl. She's fairly new in the UFC. She's been taken down 11 times. 11 times in her fights. She's been taken down by almost all of her opponents who have tried. And then not being able to show good IQ from the ground, she was doing everything wrong. She was a fish out of water on the ground. So it tells me a girl like Waterson, who's very comfortable with taking fights to the ground, she actually did it in her Angela Hill fight, and Angela Hill is not much far different than Marina Rodriguez. Is a good striker, great striker, but she's not like levels beyond Angela Hill. Angela Hill is known for great striking too, and if she can evade being knocked out and put away by a girl like Hill, who's got good striking as well, and then also be able to take her to the ground and win the fight. She won a fight because probably it was a very close fight. It was a split decision, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see. It might have came down to because of that takedown. Let me see. See? Michelle Waterson, it was super close. 130 to 130. It was like 128 to 130. It was even strikes. And it came out to a split decision because Michelle Karate Hottie, mom champ mom. She was the only one with takedowns, and she also let me remind you, Michelle only had trouble against girls like Carla Esparza. But do you remember? And it went to split decision with Carla Esparza. Do you remember against Marina? Marina and Carla also fought, so they have a mutual opponent in common. Carla only successfully landed one takedown against Michelle. You know how many she landed against Marina? 5 in one fight. And you know how much bigger Michelle is than Carla Esparza? Pretty big size difference. Cookie Monster is nowhere near the size of Karate Hottie. They're pretty big difference in size of strength and size both. I think one is like 5'1", the other one's like 5'6", something like 5'5", something like that. In reality, on the stats it shows it like 5'1", 5'3", but it's not even that. It's more of a 4 or 5 inch difference because these stats are not correct on UFC's website. But yeah, so I really don't like to see somebody at this higher. You're a main eventer, you're headlining an event, and you got holes like this on your resume, on your game. I don't like it. I don't feel comfortable. If she was the underdog, I would probably consider maybe saying dog or pass, but I don't like to say that much because I see these fights as clear as night and day. All I can tell you is this: Karate Hottie is going to try to go for takedowns. A girl who, if she has not worked on her takedown defense and her get-up game, Karate Hottie should be the favorite here. She should not only be the favorite, a pretty moderate-sized favorite, because she knows what she needs to do. If I know it, anybody would know it, that this is how it was in her last fight. It wasn't her like 10 fights ago. Her last fight, the same fight that she won was the same fight she was 10-8 rounded. She got dominated 10-8 round. So let's see. I don't know. They drew the map on how to beat her already. So why wouldn't she stick to the game plan? She's a stronger grappler. She's a stronger submission specialist. She's a stronger wrestler. gonna have the better takedown and takedown defense. Why not? And let me tell you another difference between Ribas and Karate Hottie. Durability. Karate Hottie can take some hits. She's great at taking hits, actually. She's a tomboyish type of a girl. She's a girl who doesn't mind rolling with the boys, you know? She could take a great hit and recover. I've seen her take some big shots, like kicks to the head, and still keep coming. So as opposed to Ribas, you just tap her, and she'll go down. She's very chinny, very fragile. So that's a big difference. So if you don't put her away, if Marina is going to go up against somebody who's not chinny and not easy to put away, she's going to have to deal with wrestling and takedown attempts. Eventually, it's inevitable, right? Unless she shows up with bad IQ, bad game plan, it's going to have to happen eventually. So I give that to him. Also, another thing I wanted to touch on is the camps, man. Diego Ferreira versus Gregor Gillespie. It's a terrible camp for him. This is a guy. Remember, I told you when I was choosing Ji-Yoon Frey to win, it was because the camp she was with was the same camp. It was Fortis MMA. Because Fortis is a kind of a camp that if your weaknesses are physicality, if you have stamina issues, durability issues, strength conditioning issues, if you're someone who needs to work on their power, physical or some type of durability, endurance issues, Fortis is the best place for you to be. They work really hard and they push and push and push you to your limits until you can either break or break those boundaries and limits and go and become the best version of yourself in the physical form. We even saw it in Diego. He looked the best physical shape. His abs, his chest, everything was flexed to the max. We've never seen him in such good shape. Same with Rob. But when it comes to strategies, game plans, and orchestrating a good plan to dominate and be in good control of your opponent and have the best plan, they're the worst place in the world. The worst camp in the world. So I knew Julia Frayne is a girl who's got way more experience than her opponent. She came in as an underdog against her opponent was very new, and she was going to have the IQ advantage. So I wasn't worried about the Fortis IQ issues that I knew people had, where like a Bevan Lewis, who was the rightful favorite against like a Trevin Giles, and he lost the fight only because of bad game plan. He was doing everything you can imagine wrong, from the clinches to everything he shouldn't have done is what he was doing. He was doing the opposite of what he was supposed. It's one thing to not have a game plan, but to be doing the worst thing possible that you could do. That's what Fortis MMA does. Uriah Hall against Silva. How do you lose rounds? 2 rounds, 3 rounds in a row before finishing Silva. Before finishing Silva, Uriah Hall was losing to him. He was on his way to losing a unanimous decision against the guy who retired on that. It was his last fight. And he finished him in a matter of, a minute after finally opening up with some shots. So that just shows I'm very, very low, and you can see it in Diego. Diego was running away from Neal. He even had Neal on the ground. One time he was hurt and he fell on the ground. Diego was panicked and reset. He was running away. The referee had to cut him off and tell him stop running. He had to warn him to stop running away from Neal, even while Neal was hurt. Diego was running away from him. And that was, a guy who was trying to implement exactly what Gregor's going to implement. Gregor's going to have the better IQ, better physic. His physicality could be met by his. Maybe they're equally the same, but that's it. All right, guys, so you got 3 picks. Recap quickly. I got 2 underdogs. Michelle Waterson, which I don't expect you to put heavy chalk on. This is not that I'm not confident. It's just that they're both one is kind of new, still has holes in her game. One is at the end of her career. So it's a very close fight. And anytime a fight's going to be close, you want to have the plus side, especially when it's that big. So, and I do slightly, she's got the more effective strategy and game plan. So she's a slight, but not a pick that you want to go too hard on. This is a small unit bet. Don't parlay her in a bunch of parlays and have her mess up your night. Just single bet, small single bet. Have fun watching the fight with a little bit of skin in the game. That's it. But another pick is, besides Michelle Waterson, is going to be Gregor Gillespie, who's this is a bounce back spot. He's going to not take any risks this time. He's going to stick to the plan that's most effective, what got him to the show, and show us why he's a world-class elite level wrestling specialist. And he's going to, fight, again, similar to Marina, somebody just drew the map. Somebody just showed us how Diego could be beat. All right, and I don't see Gregor being submitted. That's his world. He doesn't get submitted. He's never been submitted in his career. I don't expect it to happen now. While he's especially when he's going to be in a dominant position, so somewhere in a safer spot than where Diego is dangerous mostly from. He won't be in that position. All right, and the other last pick was Underdog, who should be a slight favorite even. Another similar situation to the Michelle Waterson guy. These are guys who are not the highest level. They're never going to be future champions. If they're not a future champion, future top 2, top 3 contender, I don't ever recommend making them a heavy parlay piece or a big wager. So this is what we would call a low 2 or level 3 pick as a guy you don't want to invest heavy chalk on, but he should be the one that wins, and especially with the value they're giving us for him, the lines being this wide, how can you pass up on this opportunity to take advantage of a guy who should be a slight favorite, especially at these odds? It's worth a single bet and nothing too large because it's paying well enough that you don't have to put too much money on it, and you'll get a good return back. Don't be greedy. This is a war, not a battle. This is a small battle inside of a big war. You don't have to make a killing off of every fight. Live to fight another day, and don't be greedy, and you'll do great in this game. Or join the Patreon, and all you got to do is duplicate my bet slips because I got the right idea. Win, lose, or draw, I will give you always the smartest, best plays, prop bets, and for the picks on every card. I'll never, even if we're ever wrong, it's not going to be because we made the wrong choice. Everybody always tells me, man, I get, it was bad luck, but that was the right choice. Even if they fought again, I would go with this guy next time because I know that would never happen again. That's usually the response I get from my members. They're never like, what were you thinking? Why did you pick that guy? I never hear that from anybody. Even in the comment section, guys who are not in my Patreon, if you look at my comment section, my haters are not like the usual haters you see on other channels where like, hey, you need a fact check. This guy does this or he does that or he's good at that or I never have haters try to correct me. They only talk stupid stuff about me personally, never about my content or my expertise. That tells you a lot, trust me. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, the reminder bells, the notification is important, pays me back for my time, and it gets me coming back more and more. Thank you for all your support. Good luck on your bets, and I'll see you on the next segment.